You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for the Mandalorian Season 3 episode, The Convert. I guess Chapter 19, The Convert. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and with me, as always, my illustrious co-host, Joe Hogan.
Tongs days, am I right?
Yeah, 2 episodes in a row.
That's
Two
it.
episodes in a row.
That's it.
That's it. And listen, guys, if the last episode that we just recorded of Rebel Cells is any indication, that's the only thing Joe's going to say on this episode.
Probably.
It'll still be an hour and a half, but that's the only thing that Joe's going to say.
That's it. All right, bye, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, listen, another great episode of The Mandalorian, 3 weeks in a row. I think that makes it a hat trick. Man, not what I was expecting this week.
No,
and
not
yet, and yet a wonderful, delightful surprise. I have absolutely heard the idiots on the internet going, "Where's the Mandalorian in this episode of The Mandalorian?" And I'm like, clearly you guys haven't figured it out yet. This show is about everything. The Mandalorian actually isn't even necessarily referring to Din Djarin at all times. So, settle down. And the Book of Boba Fett, yeah, it had a couple of chapters about Din. That's fine. They were chapters that were really important for the Book of Boba Fett, because I'm pretty sure if Din wasn't there, Boba would have ended up dead, and his Rancor would have killed everyone in Mos Espa if Grogu wasn't there. So it was kind of important that they be brought back into that story, or at least it ended up being. And of course, it's all contrived, so whatever. But this episode, I love it. It's bookended with 2 fantastic moments. The dogfight at the beginning is just like, oh man, this is some of the best Star Wars we've ever gotten. What a sequence.
That was perfect action. It was a perfect action sequence.
I don't know if you caught this. I don't know how many people caught this. I haven't really seen anybody talk about it yet, because we're in the spoiler window, and although there are many people who are not respectful of that, most people are. The smart people generally are. So I haven't heard anybody talk about this yet. When Din does the move again, he did it in the Razor Crest, right? We saw him do it in the Razor Crest. Yeah, I did notice that. Where he goes up
the Batwing move.
Yeah, the Batwing move, and he does it again, but this time in the N1, and I was just like, Din, you beautiful son of a gun. Incredible. I love it. He's got his tried and true. But it's fun because it's a new ship, right? If he were doing it again in the Razor Crest, I'd be like, really? We already saw this. But because it's in the N1, it's like, oh, different ship, same fighter, right? It's not, it's definitely, it's not about the ship, it's about the pilot,
right?
What a great scene. I mean, when he's like basically drop me off, I'm gonna take him out in the N1, and he just jumps out of the ship, and these TIE interceptors just whip past him. And and then he just rockets himself down and totally botches the landing. But it's okay. We love him. And he hops in that N1, and we're just like, yes, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. R5 sliding around inside the Gauntlet fighter.
That poor thing, man. Poor R5.
Uh, yeah, all such great stuff, and and now Bo has nothing left. Whew, that's a
You know,
dangerous
you
spot
know
to
what
be
though?
in.
Real quick though, before
Yeah,
that, what's your take on her not mentioning the mythosaur?
I well, she knows what the significance of that is, and I think that she is afraid of where that could be leading, in terms of, like what does this mean for the people of Mandalore? She turned her back on Mandalore, right? She said there is no Mandalore anymore, and then they go here. Like Din is the one who's like, I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna prove that Mandalore is not dead, right? And he was right, and so I think that she's a little bit. I think she's got a little bit of shame, and I think that that's one of the reasons why what happens at the end of the episode happens, because she's kind of like, I think that it is a spiritual moment for her to see the mythosaur, and she doesn't know what to do with it yet because she closed herself off to that. What we saw her doing in the last episode before that moment was mocking the legend, right?
True.
And then she goes down there and she sees that not only is the legend absolutely 100% unequivocally true, it's still alive, which means that Mandalore is still alive, which means that this attitude that she has of like there's nothing left to fight for, which is how she was at the end of the first episode, is she's been incorrect. Her entire belief structure has been shaken to its foundation just in time for her to be converted to a cult. That's why I say like her, like the castle being destroyed, her having nothing left, she's in a very dangerous position. It makes her very dangerous, but then it also like uh she is at the mercy of the children of the watch now.
I didn't take it that way. Her keeping that too. I mean, I think that's really interesting, and I'm sure you're probably right because you're pretty good at calling this stuff out early on.
what what was
Um,
your read on it?
I don't know why I got the vibe that she kept it to herself specifically so that she could come back and be the one to tame it, and she could be the one to stake claim on. See, I should be Mandalore. I teamed the Mythosaur, but like Din doesn't even get the opportunity to because he didn't know that was even a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be against the claim with the dark saber or whatever, but I don't know why. I just got the vibe of her that felt more deceptive than to me than her not being ready to process what it means. Um, I need to go back and rewatch that scene with what you said in mind because now I'm curious if I'm going to feel the same way after I see that again. But
Yeah, I think taken on its own, definitely like at the beginning of the episode, that was how I felt, was that she was keeping this to herself as like this is important and I don't want to let him know, because if I let him know he's going to steal this the way he stole the dark saber.
right, exactly. That's
Yeah.
how I took it. Yeah.
And I think that I think that it's structured in that way so that we have those questions, so
Okay.
that we treat it that way. We go like, oh, is that what this is about, or is it something else? And but I think that like by the end of the episode, when the armor is like, you've been redeemed as well, and she's like, but I never took the creed, and she's like, did you bathe in the waters, right? Like you were there, you did it. Have you taken your helmet off since that happened? No. Then you're one of us. Like then you just did. Like you just did take the
Mm.
creed. Like that's what just happened, right? And then there's this moment of like belonging. This is unbelievable that 3 weeks in a row we have an episode of Bad Batch and an episode of Mando airing on the same night with the same like just incredible quality, and then thematic elements that tie the two episodes together. It's staggering to me
Yeah.
that like this that the because that's not a reach. I'm not like going like, how can we connect these two disparate stories that are happening? It's like, no. Pabu is absolutely, that story is absolutely about the Bad Batch finding a place to belong, right? And go listen to Rebel Cells for more on that, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. But we start talking about Pabu. I and then the end of this episode is, it's funny because it's actually like they're actually like they have completely opposite meanings even though they're the same thing, right? Because Bo is now like a part of the clan. She's just been adopted into the Children of the Watch. But whereas the Pabu thing, we're like, yay, we're happy for the Bad Batch. With this one, it's like, this is not good. This is definitely not good. There's no good can come from this. This is going to go very badly. I don't know exactly how. I have some ideas. I think that the Armorer is going to be the villain by the end of the season, but it's not going to go the way you want it to. It's not going to just be a happy ending for Din and Bo. They're not going to like get Mando married and clank their helmets together, and have a vow or whatever. Like that's not how this story ends. That moment at the end of all of the children like tapping her on the shoulder, right, as like, you're one of us now, is meant to feel scary. It's shot, and the music and the pacing of it is absolutely terrifying, um in such a great way. I love it so much. I think that they totally nailed that tone. um and I mean, like, we could talk for half an hour just on those two scenes, like the beginning and the end, and then there's this whole thing in the middle. It's like the most delicious Oreo ever, because then there's just this delicious cream filling in between these two wonderful chocolate cookies. And Yeah, what a delightful episode. Because I I was that on your end or my end, that sound? I just heard like music.
I didn't hear anything.
Oh, okay. um but anyways, I it's I it just it go this went to places that I didn't expect the Mandalorian to go, right? We had kind of pegged this show at the beginning of this season as like, listen, guys, if you want serious political stuff and like, like what's going on in the wider galaxy, then you just wait for season 2 of
Just
Andor.
saying it.
Yeah, this is not it. This is a silly story about Himbo Knight and his frog wizard son, and now the his sword girlfriend, right? Like, like that's what this show is. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, we can do that too. It's almost like John Favreau was like seeing stuff from Andor and going like, you're not the only one who gets to do this stuff. um and for my money, I don't know, this is a lot more fascinating, because in Andor, to assert that, hey, this authoritarian regime called the Empire, that is actually like the machinations of an evil space wizard. um I don't know if you guys know this, but they're the bad guys. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, we did actually know that. We did actually know that from the first movie in 1977. But I'm glad that you guys could reinforce that fact in the most like emotionally disturbing ways possible. So like, cool, that's good. Like, let's do that and give me incredible anxiety and just stress me out beyond belief. All while making an incredible television show that deserves to be celebrated. But um but then but then the Mandalorian was like, what if I told you that the New Republic's just as bad? You're like, sorry, what? Yeah. You know how like those space cops showed up in season 1 and season 2, and we're like, oh, that's cool. It's the guy from Kim's Convenience, and the guy that also the guy that also makes the Star Wars. They're space cops, and it's like, yeah. Are we cheering for them? I think so. I think maybe. And it's like, yeah, but they're space cops. Like they look like they're rebel fighters, but they're not. They're New Republic, but they're absolutely space cops. And what have we learned about cops in the last few years? You know, maybe there's an institutional thing going on here where it doesn't matter who you're serving. When you give people that kind of power, they abuse it, and it becomes an issue. You know, maybe there's a 4-letter acronym for that, and we don't need to say it on this podcast because I don't want to be accused of making Star Wars political. But I would posit that maybe there's an idea that all space cops are bad, and it doesn't matter if they're New Republic space cops or Empire space cops, or hey, guess what? The Jedi who were the Old Republic space cops, which is kind of actually George's whole point in that trilogy, that like this is not what the Jedi were supposed to be. They're not supposed to be cops, right? Like that's not their role. And like Palpatine tricked them into being more, even worse than space cops. They became space warlords for the Republic, right? And instead of using droids, they used living beings. Let's just stop and think about the morals of that for a second. The Separatists are like, hey, government overreach is really causing problems. This is the overall separatist ideology, right? It's not Dooku, and it's not the Techno Union and the Trade Federation. This is like the oh man, I just had his name. I the guy that, like, there's a little bit of a romance thing with Ahsoka.
Lux Bonteri.
Lux Bonteri, right? This is the Lux Bonteris of the world, even the Mandalorians, right? Where it's like, hold up, I don't think the Republic is good. I think maybe the Republic is actually corrupt, and there are some serious problems that we need to look at here. And the Jedi are like, no, we defend the Republic. And then the Republic is like, well, we found this clone army. Actually, you guys found it for us, so we're going to ask you guys to lead them into battle against a bunch of droids. So who's using the droids? The Separatists are using the droids. Why are they using droids? I don't know, because the Trade Federation uses droids, because I guess it's cheaper than soldiers. It's like, well, maybe actually, I mean, like, let's have a conversation about droid rights, but maybe actually, like, they don't, their resources are so meager that they don't want to sacrifice living beings in order to fight for their ideology and their independence, right? It sounds a little bit like maybe they're the good, like maybe the Separatists are the good guys sometimes, right? There are heroes on both sides. And maybe the authoritarian regime that is the Republic, that's like, well, we have a few million of these disposable human beings, and we're just going to throw a whole bunch of them at your droids, and a bunch of them are going to die, but we're going to stop your droids because they're like better than droids because they can think. So it's worth the sacrifice of living beings that we don't know, we didn't actually ask for them, but then like Obi-Wan found them, and then they were like, hey, these belong to you guys, and so we were like, yeah, cool, just use them, I guess. And the Jedi were like, I guess we're okay with that. It's completely against our ethos, but we're going to do it anyways, because because it's the greater good, right? And that ultimately leads to the downfall of the entire Republic and the formation of the Empire, and Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine at the head of that. Get rid of that regime, and then you just put the New Republic in, and guess what? Nothing changes on Coruscant. Like, how fantastic is that moment after Pershing gives his speech and he comes out, and these disgusting 1%ers are like, man, this is fascinating stuff. And like they're talking to him about something. It's like, the one guy says something, and then somebody's like, you mean, well, it's not the Empire anymore, and he's like, yeah, right, whatever. It doesn't make a difference, right? Like the money still spends the same, sort of thing. And it's like, it's just like that whole aspect of it, like that, for the rich, for the wealthy, for the people in power, nothing changed. Whether it was the Republic, the Empire, or the New Republic, their lives have been exactly the same the whole time. Like what like Andor spent an entire season, 12 episodes, getting across these complex ideas, and then Jon Favreau comes in this one and goes like, I think I can do it in 3 lines, actually. I think I can do it in 3 lines. And I can do it in the place you least expect it, which is like, you remember when the good guys won at the end of the Battle of Endor? Like Return of the Jedi is like, we got those fireworks over the teddy bear tree houses. And we were like, we did it. And it's like, yeah, yes, you did it. And they toppled the statue, and Bespin was free, and Tatooine was like, yay. And then Cobb Vanth got to be a marshal and all that stuff, and that's cool. But then the next day, people woke up and went back to work. Like they just got up and they just kept doing what they were doing, and nothing has changed. The wealthy stayed wealthy and continue to profit off of all this stuff. And it actually, like, this is the very first time since the sequel trilogy premiered, right? Like since we first saw The Force Awakens, that I can say, I guess they never won the war. That's why The Force Awakens happens. That's why the First Order is there. That's why the New Republic gets destroyed, is because the war actually never ended. Just like how, like, we're watching Bad Batch and we're like, the Clone Wars have ended. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Palpatine just stopped fighting, but the war is still happening. You guys just don't realize that he's been playing you guys the whole time. And now there's like this aspect of like, even once he's gone, even once he's dead, the things that he did are still affecting the galaxy for the worse. And even like when those Imperials are captured and rehabilitated, they get turned into numbers, completely dehumanized. Wear this outfit. You guys all wear these matching outfits. Put this badge on. You're a number and not a person. As a Jewish person watching that, I'm like, oh, the New Republic are not good guys. They're not good guys at that point. The second
Also,
that
you can't leave this area.
Yeah,
You have to
like,
stay in this this little place.
Yeah, and we're gonna put you to work, even though you are a brilliant scientist. We are going to, and like, yeah, okay, we're not going to continue your cloning stuff because your cloning stuff is unethical, and yeah, the Empire was letting you do that because they were trying. Hey, guy, hey, Pershing, they're getting you to clone the evil Emperor. That's what you've been working on, bud. Like, that's what you've been working on. It's not, you're not saving people's lives with cloned hearts. You are cloning an evil space wizard. That's the point. That's the whole point. But he doesn't know that. But it's like, even though he's a genius and can work on, like, they could have him working on any number of scientific advancements or whatever, like initiatives, they've got him cataloging Imperial technology for destruction, right? Like for being dismantled, which is really not even something that needs to be done. Right? Like it's one of those bureaucratic things of like, no, you got to log all this stuff so that we can destroy it. And it's like, why? Well, so that we have a record of all of the stuff that we destroyed. To what end? To put in the records? Or is somebody going to use those records for something? I don't know if they want to know. Okay, what would they want to know? What we destroyed. What are you destroying? All this Imperial technology. Why? Because it's Imperial technology. So we good? Keep logging this stuff, okay? And it's really just menial. It's just a menial task to give them something to do to keep industry going, to fuel the economy. Right? It's like, it's just like, it's so on point and so succinct, right in the middle of a Mandalorian storyline of like, hey, we saw a dragon. We saw a really, really big dragon. Remember that, guys? And then they got in their starfighter and they fought some TIE fighters. It was pretty cool. So now how do you feel about Imperials being treated like Jews during the Holocaust? How about that?
Yeah, that
Any
was weird.
thoughts? Any
That was
thoughts? And it's
that was
like,
weird.
are they bad guys? I don't know. They're supposed to be bad guys. Aren't all the Imperials bad guys? Just following orders isn't an excuse, right? But like these guys were kind of just following orders. They thought that they were the good guys. They literally thought that they were fighting for peace and justice and order in the galaxy, right? Like that's why these other dudes were there. It's so clear, and it's clear because Katie O'Brien's character. What's her character's name?
Elia Kane?
Yeah.
Something?
Um, who is obviously like she's just found a new way to be a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And like this is the like that the end of the episode with that moment is our confirmation that all they did was take down the cogs and put up the bird, the starbird, right? Like that's all they did. They just repainted everything. No different than when the acclimators and venators became Imperial Star Destroyers, right? Like we see it in Bad Batch. We've seen it from the other perspective where it's like all like we saw that ship in like a couple episodes ago, and it was just like, oh, that's a Clone Wars era Republic battleship, and they just took the red markings off of it. They just got rid of the Republic insignias, right? But it's the same ship,
Mm.
and now it's being used for evil, right? These gunchips that used to be a symbol of like, oh my god, the clones are here to save the day. Because every time those gunships would come in during the Clone Wars, you were like, oh my god, the cavalry's here, right? Like it was such
Yeah.
a like those gunships were like a symbol of the might of the Grand Army of the Republic, right? Like they were that design is so good because it just instantly always evoked that for me of like, oh, here they come, right? Like here come the good guys. And then they turned it around in a couple weeks ago in Metamorphosis, and it's like, oh, those are Imperials now. Oh, they're the bad guys, you guys. And now we're flipping it again in Mando where we're like, it's Coruscant. And it looks exactly the same as it did when it was Imperial occupied Coruscant, which looked exactly the same as it did during the old Republic, like during the fall of the Republic. Like it's like Coruscant never changes, which is I think why like in the story they set up the new seat of the government on Hosnian Prime. Actually, in I don't know if you know this in some of the Legends stuff, there's a thing of like it the seat actually moves. It's not in one place anymore. It's not like it was with Coruscant, like with the old Republic, whereas like just Coruscant was the capital of the galaxy.
Mm.
It because it was on Chandrilla, and then
Oh,
it moved
really?
from so when like immediately following Return of the Jedi, when the New Republic established its government, they established it on Chandrilla because Mon Mothma was the chancellor, right? And so like Leia and Han are on Chandrilla setting up the new government, which is why Ben Solo's home planet is actually Chandrilla, because
Really?
he
I
was
did not
born there
know that.
because that was the seat of the government at the time. But by the time that we get to the Force Awakens 30 years later, it's on Hosnian Prime, and it's because it's Hosnian Prime's turn. It's like the Olympics, right? Like how the Olympics goes to like different host
Interesting.
cities,
Okay.
so that like no one place owns the Olympics, right? Was the idea back in the day.
Oh,
And so
okay.
it's the same thing where it's like I think that there's 3 or 4 planets that had been like the hosts to the Galactic Senate. But I know that like Chandrilla was the first one, and then Hosnian Prime was obviously the last. But yeah, like I they've formed this, like they formed it away from Coruscant, I think for that reason. Like that was like Mon Mothma's ideology. It was like Coruscant is actually part of the problem. It's not, Palpatine took advantage of it, but it was there. It was always there. Like this economic center of the world, of the galaxy, is corrupt. It's just like um and I love it. We go to the little carnival or whatever, and we see what
No, no,
was
no. Not Little Carnival or whatever.
okay.
That was the like the center from Clone Wars where
Yeah,
Obi-Wan meets up with Satine when she's in hiding during the Mandalore plot.
correct. I was getting there. I was getting there because I
I
was like,
mean, you said whatever.
yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
upset me. I was like, that's a Clone Wars location, Michael
Yeah.
Cohen. This is
But
important.
we get to see the peak of the mountain, right?
Yes,
Which
yes.
we the
Very
first time
cool.
that we got to see that was in Clone Wars. Um, and yeah, like so we get that whole moment. But that is to remind us that Coruscant is a Coruscant's a dangerous place, right? It's like, where are we standing right now? We're standing at
Mm.
the peak of the tallest mountain on the planet. And they say that this is the only place on the planet that you can actually see the surface because the city is so big that it reaches the peak of, like, for our analogy here, it's like this is like the peak of Mount Everest, right? Or the peak of like K2. I don't remember which one's the tallest. Um but I like that's the idea here, right? Is that like, and for those of us who know, those of us who've spent a lot of time in the Star Wars galaxy, we know that there are levels upon levels, thousands underneath that beautiful pavilion, right? Of people that have never seen the sun, which is like staggering to think about, right? That like there are people who live their whole lives closer to the core of Coruscant that never make it up to the surface. It's a different planet to them, right? Like it's a completely different world. In the way that like there are people who live in the Midwest who will never see New York, right? They'll never see one of like the coastal elite cities, right? They'll live their whole life without ever going there.
It blew my mind when I was watching something the other day. I can't remember what it was, and somebody was mentioned the person that was with them. He's like, "Oh, this is the first time ever seeing the ocean." I was like, "The first time seeing the ocean?
Yeah.
Where does this guy?" And then I was like, "Oh wow, yeah, there's probably a large percent of the country who has just never traveled out and has seen the ocean." For me, I've grown up next to it my entire
Yeah.
life, so for me, it's like, "Oh, the ocean, it's always there." But
Yeah.
like that perspective never really even dawned on me that, oh yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, a person who lives their whole life never seeing the water that has whales in it. Right? Like you phrase it that way and it's like, wait a second, what? No, because as I mean, I grew up in Vancouver, right? So it's same thing for me. It's like, what do you mean you've never seen the ocean? Like it's 15 minutes away.
How can you
I
miss it?
Yeah. But yeah, like so Coruscant is not a good place, right? Coruscant is a place that is built on the backs of like a very literal proletariat underfoot. And we got little glimpses of that in Andor as well, right? When Cyril Karn goes home and his childhood home, is this like depressing concrete slab of an apartment with his mother that also doesn't see sunlight, right? And that's not even that far below the surface, I don't think. Like the
Mm,
implication there is that like that's, he's like in a crappy suburb, right? As opposed to like the people that we've seen in the Clone Wars that are like on level 1313, where it's like, yeah, I guess maybe if you make it to one of those spaceport holes, you look up and see the sky every once in a while,
mm.
but most of them are just toiling away in obscurity, literally underfoot. Like what a dystopian idea that we never really I it's only ever sort of like touched on, like it's a very surface thing of like, oh yeah, Coruscant's got all these levels, and the levels underneath kind of suck. But it's, you know, if you're a criminal, it's okay, because you can get away with a lot of cool stuff. It's a great place to hide. Like that's how, like that was always the thing in the Clone Wars. It's like, oh, we'll go to the lower levels because we can hide there. Like the Ahsoka story and stuff like that, and Asajj Ventress and whatnot. It's like, okay, fine, but like let's talk about what's really going on here. The Martez sisters stuff kind of got into it a little bit, right?
Mm.
But not overly, just sort of in like a you know, uh, these sisters are tough because they've grown up in this environment, not like this is a huge injustice and somebody should do something about this sort of way. But yeah, so Coruscant's a bad place, and all the people on Coruscant are pretty bad people, because they just kind of like go with it. They just, you know, we'll have our glowing popsicles and listen to our happy version of the March of the Resistance while
I
we
love
look at
that. I thought that was so cool.
the tippy top of this mountain. And she plays the gag on him, which is so good. Like you knew that was gonna happen. um yeah, you jump in with some stuff because I've talked a lot about this one as well, so I want you to do some talking.
Oh
Tell me
man.
some stuff that you liked in this episode.
I mean, really, a lot of the things I was digging was the Easter eggs, and I think there were a few, right? Because there was, okay, so there was the Clone Wars location, there was the mountaintop, there was the March of the Resistance, there was the drink that she says she's gonna buy him. I'm pretty sure is a Galaxy's Edge drink. It's like fuzzy photon or something like that.
Well, fuzzy tauntaun is a drink for sure,
No, it wasn't she didn't say
but
tauntaun,
that's
right?
not what she said. Yeah,
No, it was something else. All right, maybe I'm misremembering. Um, yeah, this episode, I mean, obviously it was a big surprise. None of us really saw it coming.
yeah. We knew from the
I
trailers that we were going to get Coruscant stuff, but I don't know that any of us expected it to be this type of a Coruscant story. Right?
I thought Elia was killed in the season 2 finale because I remember her getting like shot in the chest and going down, you know, on the bridge when they took the bridge. So I was, at first I didn't think it was her, and then when it kept, you know, especially like I did. Oh my god! Speaking of Easter eggs, the Opera House from episode 3 was awesome to go back
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Plus like the fields, not the field, the like the big open space from Attack of the Clones, the Zam Wessel chase and that like tunnel area thing. I don't know if it was the exact same building, but all of that stuff felt like the same area. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just gushing that, oh, it's that thing that we've seen before, but I I do I understand why people don't like those types of Easter eggs and feel like it's shoehorned. So like I understand where they're coming from, but it does feel connective to me. It does feel like we're I don't really know how to articulate this. I like going back to places that we've seen before and seeing how much they've changed and how they haven't changed. And you mentioned, you know, Coruscant is the same but different, but really mostly the same. But I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. It's just something that I like. I like seeing the difference, and I like seeing, because like there's this weird there is a difference. There is a difference with how the New Republic
yeah,
treats, you know, people who would have been prisoners of war. There is a difference in how, you know, there would be no rehabilitation. It would just be, oh, okay, you're going to be sent to a working camp only, and you know, or we're just gonna straight up shoot you. We're just gonna kill you because
yeah.
you're dead weight. Um,
I mean, like I think that the interesting thing here is that it's the opposite of what we see in Andor, which is that like
right?
in
Yeah,
Andor
exactly.
the Empire is using these bogus like judicial things of like oh you jaywalked, now uh
Yeah,
1 million years
20
dungeon,
years.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's like and sending people off to these places to build the Death Star, right? Like that's ultimately what that's about, is that they need free labor in
Mm,
order to build a battle station, right?
mm,
And then but then what we see with the New Republic is that they have a public program that they are using as a PR tool in order to make prisoners not prisoners. We're rehabilitating them. They have freedom. Look, they can go to the pavilion and have a popsicle. Okay. They need to check in with their parole officer every 48 hours or whatever, and make sure that they're not, psychopaths or whatever, and they have to wear these uniforms and they have to do this and that. But what do they have them doing? They have them dismantling Death Stars, essentially. Like
yeah.
it's Star Destroyers, but like they have them doing the opposite thing, right? Like it's just everything is the opposite. Instead of it being a secret, it's publicized. Instead of it being building a Death Star, it's dismantling the War Machine, right? But they're doing the same thing, which is that they're using their political opponents as a means to an end. Right?
Mm,
Under the guise of rehabilitation. And I say the guise of rehabilitation because at the end it's like that's a mind flayer, and they're like, no, it's not.
yeah.
It's a similar. It's a it's kind of, yeah, okay, yeah, it is the same thing, but like it's on a low setting
It's
though, so don't worry
low.
about
It's
it.
good.
Right? A couple,
So
you're gonna be happy after this. And it's like, yeah, we're gonna
speaking
do
of,
shock therapy.
I'm curious what your take on what it is Elia's. I hope that's her name because that's what I keep calling her. What are her motives? Do you think she's trying to clean up the mess that Pershing was there? Or do you think she's trying to kind of maybe not brainwash him, but like, because I'm trying to put my finger on, is he still useful to the Empire? Because they obviously still want him. Well, I
Hmm.
think they want him to do what he was doing for them, to continue doing for them. Um, but this almost felt like a, well, he's a loose end, we have to clean him up kind of
Yeah,
thing for me.
I think she's absolutely working for Gideon. She's still working for Gideon. But she's doing it as a mole from within the New
No, no,
Republic,
no. I follow
right?
that, but I mean, like, what exactly is her
To
goal with Pershing specifically?
Yeah,
What is
because
she doing?
like we have to remember that everything, there's a difference between the Imperial Remnant and whatever Gideon is a part of, right? Gideon and the whole thing of like we need Grogu, all of that. There's something else going on there that's bigger than the Imperial Remnant, because the Imperial Remnant, not that they've ever called it that in this, but like what we would have considered that in the Legends stories was I Werner Herzog's character, right? Like
Mm,
these warlords, these imperial warlords with these crappy stormtroopers and all of that sort of thing. Gideon has resources. He's getting something from somewhere, from someone, right? What is that? It's the First Order, right? The First Order is out there. We know where the First Order is, actually. They're on Exegol, right? So this like her orders are coming from Exegol. Whether she knows that or not is a big question. But that's ultimately where it's coming from the Sith Eternal, right? Like
mm,
they're the ones ultimately pulling the strings. I don't know in the timeline because we don't have anything concrete at this point about whether or not Palpatine has been resurrected, right? Or whether or not like they're in the process of trying to do that for the first time. Pershing was obviously a part of that program. He was working towards that goal, even though they had him convinced that he was, doing science to grow organs or whatever altruistic thing. Because I think that he truly believed that he's doing the right thing, and that his science, his work and research was going to lead to beneficial things for the New Republic, that they just couldn't see it because they have all these hangups about cloning, right? So he's
mm.
like, I think like he's looking at it and he's going like, no, this is like stem cell research, right? But what he doesn't realize is that they're like, yeah, we're growing stem cells so that we can resurrect the Emperor. Right? And I don't know that I don't think that Kane knows that either. I think that she's just following orders. I
Mm.
think those orders are coming from Gideon. I don't think Gideon knows what this is all about. I think that Gideon has an idea of like this is about restoring the empire. I don't think that he realizes that restoring the empire means literally restoring the emperor, right? So there are layers going on here because we've also got Snoke somewhere in the galaxy, and we don't know the story there. We do know that there's a connection between Snoke and Luke and Leia and all of that, because Leia talks about Snoke of like no, Snoke tricked Ben, like he tricked all of us, right? Like she kind of, she never really says it, but she kind of says it, that like Snoke was able to get close to Ben at some point, and that's where they screwed up, is that they allowed this like what turned out to be a dark side force user to have access to their son, and that's what put him on the path to the dark side, right?
Mm.
So like that's also happening somewhere in the galaxy. Whether or not Snoke has been decanted from his pickle jar yet or not is also unclear, because we just don't have enough information. But all of that is going on, and the First Order exists at this point in time. The First Order exists. The Imperials that Gideon is working for are First Order Imperials, if that makes sense. Like they're like, as
Yeah, yeah,
opposed
that's fine.
to the Imperials that were left over after the Battle of Endor,
Right.
right?
Okay.
The ones which like those, I feel like those are the ones that did like that executed like Operation Cinder and stuff like that. Is like those guys ended up becoming the Imperial Remnant. They've, the Battle of Jakku is where that all kind of ends, and then it's just, and we're post Battle of Jakku at this point, right? I think we are, because that's the Battle of
Yeah.
Jakku is like 5 years after Return of the Jedi,
Yeah.
and we're like 7 or 8 years now, right? So we're somewhere
Yes.
in there,
Yeah.
between seven
I
and nine
think,
years
yeah,
now.
even at the start of the Mandalorian, we had already finished.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they might
Yeah.
even have referenced it at some point, but um so like the Werner Herzog's character is like one of the guys that sort of survived through all of that, took his stormtroopers and became a warlord in the Outer Rim, right, where the
Mm.
New Republic doesn't care, on Navarro, right? I but but Gideon is hooked into like the source, into the First Order, and they're like supplying him with new ships and new armor and all of the things that they need in order to continue the research that they have to continue, which I think we also saw some of that on Navarro, but it was like in season 2 when we see the facility. But it's like when we saw that facility, that was different from what we saw with the client, right? Like his stormtroopers were dingy and broken
Yeah.
down and
Yeah.
taped together, right? But then we saw the stormtroopers in that facility on Navarro, and it was like, wait, these guys are like Gideon's people, right? So it's like clearly those are also first order Imperials, right? And then we see the clone tubes, and it's like, okay, that's
Right.
what
Yeah.
this is. That's what
Exactly.
this is about. So yeah, so like Gideon was not the only one. There's a larger contingent of them out there, because obviously Gideon has been defeated and his ship was taken by the Mandalorians, right? By the Night Owls, and now they're off using that ship to, you know, cause havoc all over the galaxy as mercenaries, right? But then where are all of these Imperial ships coming from in the beginning of this episode? They're obviously they're interceptors, which means that they didn't get there themselves. They don't have
Mm.
hyperdrives. So there's a cruiser somewhere on what, I can't remember the name of that planet, Kalevala. I
Yes. Yeah.
So like obviously like the cruise, because the bombers come, and like there's all these interceptors and stuff. So um there's another Moff that we haven't met yet, right? And I think like, but I also think that like Gideon is still in play, because I also think that like the New Republic is probably not all New Republic. I think there's probably a lot of Imperial sympathizers inside the New Republic, and that's what we're kind of driving at here. And I think that there might be a little bit of a storyline of like to make it a little even to make the First Order even more of a cautionary tale for our current political and ideological culture wars that are going on right now of like, hey, um there are Nazis in the United States.
Mm.
Not people who who are racist, not people who are anti-Semitic. There are literal Nazis in the United States, and they're
Actual
just,
friggin' Nazis.
yeah, you just don't know that they're Nazis because they don't broadcast it to people. Except like this weird thing happened when Donald Trump became president,
Oh
where all of a
man.
sudden they started broadcasting that they were Nazis. I wonder what that timing has to do with anything. And I'll let people draw their own conclusions as to whether or not Trump is directly responsible for that. Um, I personally have my own feelings that you guys can probably guess. It doesn't take much, but I think that we're gonna get a little bit of that within Star Wars as well. Of like, there are definitely Imperials. I mean, we see it like Kane is one of those Imperials. She's apparently working for the New Republic.
Yeah.
They're like, good job, like mission accomplished. You rooted out another one. It's like, rooted out another one. This was entrapment. She tricked him into doing this. I and but she did all of this to get him into that position in order to wipe his mind, because he has sensitive information that the First Order doesn't want the New Republic to know about. That's what I firmly believe. I think it might come back later of like, Pershing is important and he has information, because whatever is going on, like the ultimately Din and Grogu and all, like, they're going to have to do something about Moff Gideon and the ongoing threat, that because like they're coming after Bo-Katan, right? So
Mm.
they're not done. They're not done with Din and Grogu either, right? Which I think, like, at the beginning of the season, we thought like, oh, that chapter is closed, especially with the way that the first two episodes went. And then this episode just opens all of that back up and goes, no, 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 no. There's still lots of Imperials out there that have resources and are going to be coming after Grogu. Like, we're not out of the woods yet, right? Like, it's still happening. Um so yeah, like there's a lot to unpack in this episode, because we're talking about like the huge saga implications of this storyline, and we haven't even really talked that much about like the individual component of Pershing and his journey in this. And that like this guy is in a different circumstance a hero, right? um and he gets taken advantage of. He was taken advantage of initially by the Empire, and then by Kane, and he was being taken advantage of by the Republic, the New Republic, right? Like, it's a this is a very tragic story. Pershing was screwed no matter which way he
Mm.
went, right? And he was in a very desperate position, and that's where she comes in and like absolutely capitalizes on that in order to follow, like, carry through the orders that she's been given by whoever she's been given them by. So I'm excited to see who that is. Like, I'm excited to find out that, like, I don't know, maybe Thrawn has something to do with it, right? And this is going to tie back into Ahsoka, because we don't really know where well, I guess we probably do. Exegol is probably on a galactic map somewhere, right? Is it in the unknown regions?
I have no idea. Dude, I saw that movie once. I don't remember anything about
Well, it wouldn't
the
be
lore for.
we wouldn't know it from the movie.
Okay. Well, I have no idea.
I'm wondering if the visual dictionary probably has, or the visual guide for Rise of Skywalker, which is the only one that I own, because after seeing that movie, I was like, I really need the visual guide so that I can read some stuff that Pablo wrote in order to make this story make sense. Man, that first month after Tross was like me trying so hard to reconcile that gong show of a story and
Gong Show. Man, there's a reference.
be like, this is good, right? Because it's funny, because it's like, because it was a similar experience with The Last Jedi, and then I read the novelization for The Last Jedi and was like, oh, there's more here, and went back and watched the movie again and was like, okay, I missed stuff, right? I I was conflicted after the first time that I saw The Last Jedi. I was like, that was really good, but I don't know how I feel about some stuff. And then eventually, upon further introspection and inspection of the story, I was like, no, this is very, very good stuff. This is very good Star Wars. And I wanted to do the same thing with Tross, so I have the visual guide somewhere, but I don't know where it is. Well,
Well,
I know where it is. I just don't know if I can pull it out. But...
Let me ask you something. Do you think there is a possibility that because we got this episode that was obviously mostly focused on Pershing, and we had Book of Boba Fett where, you know, it was jumping away from the main story to set up more story later. Do you think there's a possibility that we will actually cut to Gideon for an episode and just spend the whole episode seeing the tribunal or how he escaped or whatever, and seeing how he kind of got back into some sort of position of power and is now he's going after Bo-Katan with a fleet of TIE interceptors and all that stuff? Or do you think that that's not important and probably not going to veer away from it again? Because the thing I keep going back to, especially after this episode, like the fact that we spent so much time with Pershing, I keep thinking about Book of Boba Fett and how I think I had mentioned before when we were talking when we did our Book of Boba Fett episodes actually, that I knew two things in advance for about a year. I knew that Cad Bane and Cobb Vanth were going to get in a gunfight and Cad Bane was going to win. And I knew that we were going to get a scene of Ahsoka and Luke talking about Anakin while watching Grogu train. And they came from a source that obviously I'm not going to name, but it is one that I trusted. And at the same time, I was still like, I can't believe we're going to get those things in the Book of Boba Fett. And I keep thinking about that now in Mandalorian. And I keep wondering, are we going to get some stuff that nobody ever thought we were going to dedicate a full episode to in the Mandalorian after what we got for Book of Boba Fett? And now really after this one, it only kind of makes me feel like, oh yeah, this is a pretty strong possibility. Because you even said earlier, like, it's not just the Din Djarin Grogu story. It's there's a larger story that they are a part of. This is like a bigger galaxy than just the two of them. What do you think about how far from those characters we could go this season, and what would you want to see set up?
I think it would be a really cool surprise if we get introduced to Thrawn now in Mando, as opposed to like saving it for Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be really cool if that's what this episode is pointing towards, because like there's somebody pulling the strings. She's not doing that on her own. She's been given an order to wipe Pershing's mind, right? And so she does this, and she takes pleasure in it, which is a whole other thing. She a bad guy. She is evil. I did just confirm via the Rise of Skywalker visual guide that Exegol is in the unknown regions.
Okay.
So
cool.
We
Ezra
know
Thrawn connection, maybe. Sure.
We know that that's where the Chiss are. Like that's where the Chiss ascendancy is in the unknown regions. We also know that that must be where Ezra is, right? Like that's been the assumption since the end of Rebels, is that like Ezra and Thrawn are somewhere in the unknown regions. Octo is also in the unknown regions. It's right on the edge of it. So if Exegol is in the unknown regions and Thrawn has ended up back in the unknown regions and the Chiss ascendancy is there, it would make a lot of sense for Thrawn to actually be the big bad. I mean, like I think that we already kind of know based on everything that that's exactly what's going on, is that
Yeah,
Thrawn is the big
he's our
bad guy
Thanos. Yeah.
for the overall Mando era, right?
Right.
Like, because it can't be Palpatine. And I think that what we'll end up discovering is that Thrawn is working towards that goal
Mm.
of like that he is the one who knows that the Sith Eternal are out there and that Palpatine's not gone, but he's the only one who knows, right? Like, he's the only Imperial that knows this. And maybe there will be some Sith. We might see some like red stormtroopers or something like that with him, or like something that sort of keys in that connection, which would be fantastic because it would start to justify some of that stuff from Rise of Skywalker, which is absolutely all just like sprinkles on the cake, no substance whatsoever, right? The Sith Eternal stormtroopers,
Mm-hmm.
there's no like why do these guys look this way? What do they do? Are they worse than regular stormtroopers? There's nothing, right? They are literally just, yeah. And then the Sith Eternal have their own red stormtroopers with like weird
Do they
sinew
fight
patterns on them
anyone?
and stuff. There's a few of them in the fight on the Star Destroyer, like
Oh,
on
on
the
the
surface
hull.
of the Star
On
Destroyer.
okay, right,
and
okay.
then and then there are the guards in the chamber with Palpatine, right? Like, there's the couple that Rey fights, and then Ben shows up and he fights them as well, right?
Okay.
But they make pretty short work of them. Like, Rey
Yeah.
just totally emasculates them.
Yeah.
That's not me saying a random word. Like, that's what she does. She just completely is like, yeah, I'm this silly little girl with force powers, and I'm gonna destroy you guys. It's one of like it's one of the redeeming moments of Rise of Skywalker, that whole sequence where when Ben shows up, like when she's there and Ben shows up. The way that all ends sucks, but everything leading up to that is like, oh, we're so close, so close. That's where I've said this before. That's where Rise of Skywalker fails for me the most. Is not that like it's an absolute travesty. It's that there are so many elements of it that are so close to greatness, but every time they get to a decision point, they do the lesser of two choices, right? It's like the costume design. There are, if you crack open that art of book, there is a design for Finn with this amazing yellow like puffer jacket that is just like, oh my god, Finn would have looked so good. And then what did they do? They made him like Black Han Solo, right? Like they took his outfit from the previous movies and they made it a vest so that he looked, and gave him the blue pants with the red stripes so that he looks like Han Solo, right? There's an awesome design of Poe, with he's got like an undershirt sort of thing. It's like a long sleeve polo, I guess, almost like rolled up with
Mm.
like the sleeves rolled up, and then his flight suit, right? And he was gonna fly, I think, an A-wing in the final sequence, and then they put him in the worst deco for the X-wing. Oh my god, I hate that. The orange triangle deco. It's so ugly. But I and then with Rey, like, they even went so far as to actually make the costume with the vest that was like reminiscent of Leia's vest from Hoth. And like there's like in the behind the scenes documentary, you see it that like they do screen tests with it, and then they decided to just take it away and just make her look like she looked in the first movie. That's like, that stuff is just so indicative of the decision making process in that film, of like, somehow Palpatine returned. Right? How does she defeat him? I don't know. She puts her lightsabers together and uses a Kamehameha blast and defeats him. Okay. He just turns into goop. I don't know. He disintegrates. How is that different from what happened in Return of the Jedi? All of the Jedi?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, but Mando has the opportunity to take some of that story, somehow Palpatine returned, and fill in that massive blank, that like egregious blank of somehow Palpatine returned. Well, not somehow, this how, right? Like let's tell that story, guys. Who is Snoke? Well, let's start to build that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a world where we get to see Thrawn in live action? It's like this is like end of the series stuff of like Thrawn is losing the battle or whatever, and the hologram comes up and it's Snoke, and he's like, the Emperor is most displeased with your performance. We won't be sending reinforcements or something like that. And it's just Andy Serkis just eating it up as Snoke because he's so good in that role that we completely forget that it's Andy Serkis. And then Andy Serkis shows up in Andor and we're like, wow, Andy Serkis is in Star Wars. And everybody pauses for a second and go, oh, he's been in Star Wars since 2015, you guys. Oops, our bad. We forgot. Because that's how good Andy Serkis is. Talk about underrated and like overlooked. Jeez, man. He should have been nominated for an Academy Award for one of those Planet of the Apes movies. Absurd. But they would have nominated him in like best supporting actor when he's like the lead character in the film or something, because they're like, well, because it's a CG role, and it's like, no. He crushes it as Caesar. But anyways,
he was Caesar.
Yeah, he's Caesar in the Planet of the Apes movies.
I had Rise, no
idea. Dawn and War. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, he is the best. But yeah, can you imagine if we got that though? If we got Thrawn and Snoke on screen at the same time talking to each other, it's actually not ridiculous. It actually makes a lot of sense. And then like we end the Mandalorian saga, whatever it ends up being, whatever show or movie ends up finishing that story, like the last shot, similar to like the end of Revenge of the Sith, when we see Vader and Palpatine on the bridge of the Star Destroyer overseeing the Death Star, right? If we were to like get that scene of hologram Snoke yelling at Thrawn, and then Thrawn gets blown up, and then we cut to Snoke on Exegol, and like the arm like lowers down, and Palpatine like is like, everything is in place. Go turn the last Skywalker or something. Be better dialogue than that, hopefully. But like he's just like everything is proceeding as I have foreseen. Like just to literally say that same line again, and get like oh cool, Palpatine actually he did have a plan, right? Like it's a retcon because Palpatine had nothing to do with the Force Awakens or the Last Jedi, but it's a necessary retcon at this point because Rise necessitates it, right? So yeah, Mando, like this, we need a thing to call this time period. But anyways, I mean, like, I don't know. I guess it's just the New Republic era, right? Because it's like it's post Return of the Jedi, but it's before the Force Awakens, and the Force Awakens is literally the fall of the New Republic. I think they refer to that era as the rise of the First Order, but but yeah, like in the same way that like the period between the prequels and the original trilogy is the rise of the Empire, or sometimes referred to as the Dark Times, but because of what Obi-Wan says, but I think that it's like formally considered the rise of the Empire, and like before the Clone Wars is the fall of the Republic, and then we have the High Republic, and then we just have the Age of the Republic in between, right? And then Age of Rebellion is the Galactic Civil War, and then post Rebellion would be the New Republic, I guess. I don't know. So this New Republic saga, I like, because they implied that it's all going to build towards like a big event, which I think we all consider like probably like a movie, right? Like no, like this will all culminate in a single unified story that brings together all of these threads.
It'll be Avengers Endgame.
Yeah,
for
where we'll
sure.
have Ahsoka and Ezra and Cal Kestis and the Mandalorian and Grogu and
Maybe
all of
Luke.
Mandalorian, maybe Luke, and all of that. Defeat Thrawn. Uh, uh, yeah,
What a
I
time
and
to be alive.
listen. I said this on the on Rebel Cells, and I'll say it here. Like on Rebel Cells, I could see them doing some stuff with Joris Saboath, Kaboath, whatever his name is. Um, in that time period, doing like a smaller story with him. I could also see them doing a massive story with him in this time period with Mandalorian, of him being
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
because we've got Grogu, right? So again, as I said on Rebel Cells, and as I'll probably say again at some point while we talk about stuff, I darkness rises and light to meet it. Like that's how this works. That's how the Force works. So we're in a weird spot where like Luke, the 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 balance actually isn't restored because Luke is restoring the Jedi, right? So it's like, so actually it's tipping the scales back on in favor of the light. But I as opposed to where it ends up at the end of Rise of Skywalker, which is more balanced because I think Rey is more balanced. I mean, Luke was balanced at the end of Return of the Jedi, but then we find out in Mando that he's not balanced at all. That he's then gone and found some books and I don't know, a compass and a bunch of other junk. And he's like, I'm going to make the Jedi again. And it's like, oh, Luke, you didn't learn anything, did you? And then we catch up with him in The Last Jedi, and Yoda's like, oh my God, how are you still this stupid? I'm gonna hit you on the head with my stick.
To
I'm a
be fair,
ghost.
Yoda should have checked in a little bit before now.
Yeah, but also on Yoda's timeline, it's like, buddy, I can't take 30 years off. 900 years, man. 900 years on the job. 30. I guess he did have a 30-year siesta on Dagobah, but 20-year siesta on Dagobah. 19. But yeah. No, you're right. Yoda definitely should have been popping in and being like, maybe this Ben Solo, maybe you should be a little bit more careful. I don't know.
Or Obi-Wan, or
Or
Anakin.
Obi-Wan or Anakin. That's yeah. Well, there's lots of storytelling in there that we need an explanation for why the ghost of Anakin doesn't intercede at any point in time. It's not hard to write that too, because it's just like, well, Palpatine was doing stuff. If Palpatine was an influence the entire time, if Palpatine was every voice that Ben ever heard inside his head, then we just need a storyline where we establish that Palpatine was actively blocking Ben Solo from access to the light side, right? And that's why he tends towards the dark, even though he's always conflicted and he's pulled back towards the light because it's his natural inclination. But if Palpatine's always blocking him from the light, basically like standing in front of the light and casting a shadow on him, then the only source of power that he has is the dark side. And so that's where he goes, right? Even though he doesn't want to, and it's actually not in his nature, as we discover by the end of the trilogy. But that's a lot of stuff. Listen, Star Wars is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
I'm a
like it.
fan.
I like the Star Wars thing. I really wish that there were more people that were into it, so we weren't just the two of us having to talk about it all the time. But
Oh, yeah.
you know, um, let's end
The
on a
curse,
happy
the
note.
curse of Willow.
Yeah, let's end on a happy note. I was just about to transition. Go, Willow got canceled. Which is obviously not actually a happy note. It's a
No.
huge bummer. Being that like I've talked about Willow a lot on Force Perspectives, I figured that we should call that out and just make a note of it. That like yeah, so they are not renewing Willow. They have canceled
Bummer.
the show, which sucks because it ended on such a cliffhanger. All of that said, if you have not watched Willow, still go watch it. Even if it's just one season, it's absolutely worthwhile. There's more stories to tell there, and they'll tell them. It'll happen. I don't know if it'll be a show, right? But like John Kasdan has more story, so I'm sure that he will fight tooth and nail to make sure that that story gets out in some fashion. Um, and I could see them doing like a comic book or a series of novels or something like that, something that doesn't cost as much as an incredibly expensive fantasy television series. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I know that everybody's really upset about it right now, and I'm right there with everybody. I almost cried in McDonald's tonight while I was having dinner with my girls, because I was just like, because I read the news early this afternoon, pretty quick after it dropped, and immediately went to anger. That was my first stage of grief. And then eating dinner. So we went to McDonald's, obviously, for dinner tonight, and get the girls all situated with their stuff. They're good. They're eating their hamburgers and French fries and drinking their chalky milks, and so I'm just on my phone. Like I got my hamburger in one hand and my phone in the other, and I'm like just scrolling, grieving with everybody else on Twitter about this sad state of affairs, and as I did, it like washed over me. Like the sadness came, and there was just a moment where I was just like, I literally had to like hold it back because I was so upset, because it just like it is weird. I knew that Willow was going to be something that I enjoyed. I was really looking forward to it, and I was sitting there going like, I'm like the only one. I'm going to be alone here. I am like, nobody else is going to give a single care about this show. And this is going to be John Carter all over again. I'm going to be telling people that they need to watch this show, and they're going to look at me weird. They're going to watch one episode and tell me I'm an idiot. Right. Which is a lot of what has happened with John Carter, is that I tell people, and they go, oh, it's really long in the middle. I'm like, yeah, be a grown up for once. People talking is also a movie. It doesn't always have to be fights. But that's what I was fully prepared for that. And then it became, by like the fourth episode, all of a sudden all of my favorite people were like, this show is great. And then eventually I got you into it, and then Carl got into it, and Kyle even watched it and was like, yeah, it's pretty good, because that's the best that you can sometimes get out of Kyle, unless it's Knights of the Old Republic. Apparently
Right.
he doesn't care.
Oh, that reminds me. I forgot. I was supposed to. Oh, that was Bad Batch. I was
That
supposed to
was
list
Bad
all of
Batch.
the. All right. Well,
Yeah.
luckily the list is 0. Nothing happened from Knights of the Republic. Nothing was referencing that. So, to be fair, I did fulfill my promise to him.
Yeah.
But...
But yeah, so Willow ended up being this thing where like all the coolest people were like, Willow is awesome. And I was like, like are you guys for real on this? Like, you guys aren't just, there isn't like a giant conspiracy to just like gaslight Mike. They're like, yeah, the stupid fantasy show that you like based on that movie that's kind of not actually that good. It has shining moments that supersede the fact that the story is horribly paced and all over the place. But mythically it's tight, and that the Ebersisk is rad, which is the two-headed dragon.
Mm.
And Val Kilmer is great. So and then they all get turned into pigs, and it terrifies me. And those trolls still bug me, man. They still bug me. I'm still scared. Since I was just a little nerd watching Willow on a Saturday afternoon matinee on TV. It's just terrifying stuff. But yeah, I really thought that I was going to be by myself, and then it was like this whole fandom crops up around it. Marie Claire and Missy doing these incredible deep dive episodes on What the Force, that just like take what was already a fun experience and just go like, yeah, but guys, look at this, like look at this, and it just being like, oh my god, this is like a seminar on storytelling. Like it is a thesis. Like, it is John Kasdan being like, this is how you do it, guys. This is how you tell a fulfilling hero's journey with all of these mythic archetypes. This is the most Star Wars thing since Disney bought Lucasfilm. And yet, like, as many people in my circle, I said earlier today, like, my echo chamber is very loud today, because like, if I open up Twitter right now and start scrolling, it is just people upset about this cancellation.
Mm.
And I know that that's not indicative of the larger reality, because I
Yeah.
talk to people and they go, "What's Willow?" And I go, "It's a movie from the 80s and a series that just aired on Disney Plus for 8 weeks." What do you mean, what's Willow? And they're like, I don't know. Is it a Star Wars thing? Why are you telling me about it? I was like, hey, is it a Star Wars thing? Maybe, actually. It might be. But man, if they had just, look, if they had committed on that, I know that there was the April Fool's joke a few years ago. That was like 15 years ago, Mike. You're old. There was an April Fool's joke back in the days, even before social media, I think, on StarWars.com, where they added to the data bank. It was like the old school data bank. They added Anduin. I think it's Anduin is the name of the planet, to the, like, they added it to the galaxy map, and we're like,
Oh,
yep,
really?
it's a planet in Star Wars. And the magic in Willow is all just the Force. And I think even in like in the entry, it was like much like the Night Sisters of Dathomir or something like that. People on Anduin have access to Force powers that appear to be magic, right? That
That's
sort of thing.
awesome.
How much more successful would Willow have been if they had gone, this is part of Star Wars now. Disney and Lucasfilm are deciding this is not its own thing, that this is part of Star Wars. It's just a part of it's in the unknown regions. It's a part of the galaxy. The Jedi don't have like any influence. The Empire, it's never been a part of any of this other stuff. It's this weird edge of the galaxy thing that has a life of its own. And so it is Star Wars Willow. Right? Like Willow, a Star Wars story, right? If
Aw.
they had just done that branding, how much more successful would the show have been?
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be canceled probably.
Probably not. Missed opportunity.
Or I guess
But
canceled is the wrong word, right? What they say, not renewed.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It sucks. It's a bummer. Um, those characters are just like, they are very special, and my connection to this story is just like, it is. I can talk about a lot of things at length, as I have demonstrated for Joe
What?
this evening, having recorded
Talking about.
once again for 3 hours. I But I can't articulate for some reason why this story in particular is so special to me, but it is. I
I can I just tell you,
Yeah.
literally 2 days ago, um, I was explaining to some friends of mine that I had gone out with that, because they were not fans of Willow either, and I hadn't really thought about the series a lot since maybe I had watched it when the finale came out. You had gotten me into
Yeah.
it just before that finale debuted, and I loved it. And for about a month, I was thinking about it a lot. And then after that, not a ton since then. Probably because Bad Batch was back, and we were looking forward to Mando, and then
Yeah.
everything with Celebration was going on. So I've just kind of been focused on Star Wars pretty much 24/7. It feels like, but all of a sudden. We were talking about shows and movies, whatever. I was like, "Oh, what was a big surprise? Was Willow." And my go-to pitch now is exactly the thing that you had said when I was articulating to you that, Tina had watched the first episode and she really liked it, but she was having a hard time with the verbiage just being like a little bit our world. And the way
Yeah.
you had described it was no, no, no. Here's the way you got to look at it to get past that. It's basically you and your friends playing an amazing D&D campaign. And like,
Yeah.
obviously real world phrasing is going to it's going to trickle in and leak into that. But for the most part, everything is really well written, and it's just you and your buddies. So you're going to slip. You're going to have some earth, you know, dialogue in there. And man, let me tell you, anybody that I pitched that to has said, "Oh, that sounds really cool. I'm gonna check that out." Even the people I was with the other day, it's like, "Oh, that actually sounds pretty decent. All right, I'll give it a whirl." So all for naught,
Yeah.
I guess. But
And I think that Disney is being too quick to make a decision here.
Yeah, this
And
feels very trigger happy.
I wouldn't be surprised if in a year, like I'm not willing to give up hope just yet. I think that there's still a possibility that we could turn this thing around. And the reason why is because Dungeons and Dragons is coming out in a couple of weeks.
Mm,
Or a couple of weeks? Next week? No, it's April, right? Is it March?
it
Does
is March
D&D
right now.
come? No, like does
Oh, when it
Dungeons
comes
and
out,
Dragons
yeah, I'm
come out
not
this
sure.
month? Um I think depending on how that does, that could change the conversation. That could be a real
Mhm.
sticking point of like, hey, Disney, you guys actually have one of these. You just did it, and then you just said that you canceled it. Um, Dungeons and Dragons movie release date. No, not that one. Not the Honor Among Thieves, please. Uh, it premiered on March 10th. Yeah, so people have seen it. When does it premiere for me? When can I go see it? March 31st. So it's a couple of weeks away. But yeah, like if this movie does well, then I think that there's a potential that they'll go back and they'll do another season of Willow, or that maybe it'll take on a different form. Maybe they'll do a movie in order to or two movies rather than spend the money to do a series, right? But like to do two, like, straight to Disney Plus movies to wrap it up. I don't know. I
Mm.
it's Iger has come back in, and I get it. As an executive, as a CEO, you got to come back in. You got to clean stuff up. Chapek whiffed it, right? But here's the thing: Iger was a vision guy, and he oversaw all of the Marvel acquisition, the Disney acquisition, or sorry, the Lucasfilm acquisition, like all of the Fox stuff, like Iger is the guy who architected all that stuff, right? He's the CEO in charge when all of that was happening, and turned Disney into what it is now. Now, is Disney a little bit bloated at the moment? I think it probably is. Like they have way too many plates to spin, and they have all the resources to do it because they're Disney, but you're just it's hard to manage that big of a portfolio.
Mm.
And you have to have faith in the individual leadership within each of those, which I think that they do with some of them, but not with others. So I think that Lucasfilm gets they get a little bit too hands on with Lucasfilm, and it's caused some problems. And I think maybe they've actually been a little bit too hands off with Marvel, and we're kind of in a weird spot with Marvel right now, where like a huge Marvel fanboy, is starting to go like, I think maybe we need to pump the brakes on some of this stuff, because these movies they haven't been stellar since
Mm.
Endgame. Other than No Way Home and Shang-Chi, I don't really feel that any of the movies have been like home runs, right? Some of the shows have, for sure. So it's like, I don't know, maybe that's just where their focus is right now. Um, but with this Lucasfilm stuff and with Willow, I think that like Chapek was just kind of like, he's a financial guy, right? Like he he was, I think he was the CFO before he became the CEO when Bob Iger retired, right? And he was doing such a bad job because like you can't put a CFO in charge of the vision of a creative company. That's a bad choice. Um, they really should have like looked for someone else,
Mm.
and they realize that now. And so Iger has come back, and but Iger is coming back, and he's making a lot of financial decisions rather than sticking to vision. And the thing is that like Willow was greenlit when Iger was in charge. So it's not like he's coming in and going like, this wasn't my idea, but he is coming in and going, Chapek mismanaged this, and so now it's a dead property, right? Like that's sort of, I think, his attitude. And he's coming in and he's talking about Solo and how Solo underperformed, and like they made a lot of mistakes on that, and that's why they're pumping the brakes on all the movies. And it's like, but at the same time, I was talking to Matt Campbell about this earlier today, and he had said like, but like, why is there no mention of Rise of Skywalker? which was like poorly received critically, and like the fans don't like it, and it didn't make as much money as the ones before it, as the two before it, despite them making a big actually, I don't know if that's 100% true. I don't know where TLJ sits in the ranking between the three of them, but I know that the Force Awakens made more money than either of them, right? Because the Force Awakens is like, it's, what is it, I think it's in like the number 3 rank right now or something, because I think that No Way Home is number 1, and I don't know where Avatar Way of Water is in that now, because it's in like that top 5. I think Way of Water might be number 2, or maybe it's number 1. I don't know, but in any case, like the Force Awakens is like up there, and Rise and TLJ didn't make it anywhere near like that, the like those top spots. I think they're maybe in the top 10, but there's a lot of Marvel movies in the top 10 as well. So like financially, like, yeah, Solo is the biggest whiff out of all of the movies that have come out. You guys also released it 6 months after The Last Jedi and didn't market it, right? Like Solo did not get good marketing. It didn't get good merchandising. I mean, like, I shouldn't say that. The merch for Solo was actually awesome. The campaign for Solo was really good, but they didn't put muscle behind it. Like,
Yeah.
it just kind of went out and died on the vine, and then the production troubles and whatever. But like Iger's kind of just been walking around spouting off about stuff, which is weird, but I think it's just to rally investors. Like they're what people need to remember is that like the executives are playing a different game, and the things that we love, Star Wars and Willow and Marvel and Indiana Jones, they're chess pieces on a board to these people, right? And that's, some of them are worse about it than others. I personally believe that Iger has treated a lot of these properties with a lot of respect, but I think that he's also been put in a really crappy position. I mean, like, he exited at the absolute worst time, right? Like, he saw, like, he made the whole thing of like, oh, you know, like, I stuck around longer than I wanted to because of the pandemic, but now it's time for me to retire. And he handed over everything in turmoil, gave it to Chapek, who is a financial guy, and was like, sort it all out. Good luck. And Chapek had no idea how to fix it, and didn't. And what did he last, like a year before they brought Iger back in?
Yeah.
So now Iger's got to come back in, and he's got to be the bad guy. And that's not for the benefit of the creatives. It's not for the benefit of the stories that they're telling or any of the properties that they own. That's for the benefit of investors. That's for shareholders. He's coming back in and he's like, I'm going to whip this all into shape. Well, how are you whipping it all into shape? I am canceling projects. We are not going to spend as much money until we start making money. Right. So like it's a tough spot. And that's where we're gonna cut it off, because Disney somehow is listening to this recording, and uh, and is attacking Joe's internet connection.
Yeah, they're upset with me.
Yeah. So before they come after me, we're gonna wrap it up there. I think Bob Iger is doing a great job, and everybody should, just give him the benefit of the doubt. He knows what he's doing.
But Bob, please reconsider Willow.
But
Please.
please reconsider Willow, Bob, Robert, Robbie. Can I call you that? Please, please, come on, man. This show's so good. You know that part at the in the last episode when like she does the thing and then the thing turns into the stuff, and then it's like, oh my god, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then she fights the thing, and it's so good.
And the cool guy armor finally works, and
so good.
There's some good stuff, man.
Whole season.
I wish you never told me about this show.
Oh my
no, that's
god,
not true. That's not true at all.
I did have a moment of like guilt. It's like I saw you commented, and then I saw Carl post something on Twitter, and I was like, I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. You could have just
Firefly all over again.
Except that this show was good.
Hey,
Hey,
Don't be that guy.
all right.
Don't be that guy. We don't. We separate the art from the artist.
Oh, hey, I had controversial opinions about Firefly long before we found out Joss Whedon was trash. No, yeah. Film and television are collaborative mediums, and so it's not any one person. So it is possible to watch Buffy and not be a bad person.
Yes, absolutely.
And to like that show, because there were a lot of people that contributed to making that show what it was. Same with Angel, Firefly, Dollhouse less so. There's a lot of people going like, are we sure that we should let this happen? It seems an awful lot like he's living out his fantasies on this one, and everybody was like, hopefully they cancel it after one season. Which did they? I don't know. That one went 2, I think, right? But
I don't think I'd never watched Dollhouse. So I have no idea.
Anyways, The Mandalorian was a great episode. Willow was a great series. It still could be a greater series with more. It's just like, come on, man. You ended on like the dire straits and the fire breathing dragons and an army of demon minions and sexy Elora Danan being all like, join me and together we can rule the galaxy. And I'm just like, come on, man. I need more. John Kasdan, if you ever hear this, I'm sorry that this is the way that things keep playing out for these amazing stories that you keep throwing at us. Solo got cut off before it could get going, and then this. It ain't fair. It ain't fair. But whatever he does next, I'll be there. I'll like whatever John Kasdan does next. I am in line already. Let's go, because the last 2 things have been 2 of my absolute favorite. I mean, like, Solo is my favorite Star Wars movie, and Willow is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. So, like, just he'll be fine. He'll make something new, probably a Star Wars.
He'll land on his feet. He'll be okay.
I don't know. Maybe he'll write an Indiana Jones. Oh man, can you imagine? Oh, I'm gonna just put this out into the universe. We all know what's going on with Ki Hye Kwan right now.
Oh my god!
Can you imagine if he wrote the Short Round movie?
Oh,
I'm gonna start. The campaign starts here and now.
All
Lawrence Kasdan. No, Lawrence Kasdan, John Kasdan. I mean, Lawrence Kasdan can help too. He did a good job on those last 2 Star Wars movies he did. The 3 previous, all those Indiana Jones movies that he wrote. John Kasdan writing, Ki Hye Kwan starring as Short Round. We get a nice cameo from Indy, from Harrison at the beginning, or maybe even just at the end. But yeah, man, I want Short Round the movie. Let's go. And you know what? Here's what I would do. Bring back Mutt.
Please no. You lost me.
I lost you. I lost you.
I love you, but you lost me.
I think you give Shy another shot, and I think that he might be able to do something.
I feel like I've given him plenty of shots.
Cool. That's it. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week for Chapter 20 of The Mandalorian. So yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Thunderquack Force Perspectives. Our opening theme is composed for us by Christy Carew. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV, and join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the Thunderquack Podcast Network.